Picture this for a second. You're lost, you're injured, and you are completely alone out in the wilderness. The sun is going down, the temperature is dropping fast, and your survival completely depends on a group of strangers finding you. For the men and women of search and rescue, the stakes literally could not be higher. Their entire guiding principle is captured in this incredibly profound little quote, "So others may live." But here's the thing, passion and bravery alone, they don't save lives in a chaotic disaster scenario. Extreme, highly scalable organization does.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the New Mexico Search and Rescue Incident Management Team Field Operations Guide. We are going to deconstruct the exact structural blueprints they use to turn absolute panic into absolute precision. Because saving lives really isn't just about rushing out into the woods. It requires an incredibly robust architecture of communication and command that can scale up flawlessly.
Consider this our initial incident briefing. We're going to move quickly through 4 highly structured phases today. 1. So others may live. 2. Establishing command. 3. Executing operations. And 4. Scaling the response. Let's get right into it. Starting with Section 1. So others may live. The mission and baseline. Because before anyone even thinks about stepping foot into the field, they have got to buy into a foundational set of rules. Listen, there are absolutely no lone wolves in a disaster response. It just doesn't work. Every single responder, I don't care what their rank is, has to follow these strict common responsibilities. You've got to check in at designated locations. You have to use clear text, meaning absolutely no confusing top-secret radio codes. You receive a formal assignment, and above all else, you ensure the safety of yourself and your coworkers. This is the baseline accountability that keeps the rescuers from accidentally becoming victims themselves. Moving right along to Section 2. Establishing command. If the responders on the ground are the muscle of this whole operation, we need to look at the brain calling the shots. Okay, let's dive into this command staff organization. Right at the very top, you've got the incident commander. They manage the entire incident, but they absolutely don't do it alone. They oversee a crucial command staff directly beneath them. You've got an information officer handling the media, a liaison officer coordinating all the different agencies, and then an incredibly vital role, the safety officer. Now, what is truly fascinating here is the sheer power vested in the safety officer. In a super rigid hierarchy, you'd normally think only the commander can stop the show, right? Well, wrong. The safety officer has full unilateral emergency authority to instantly halt any unsafe act. If they see a compromised helicopter landing zone or a wildly hazardous canyon, they do not ask for permission. They just stop the operation. It's a massive, critical, life-saving responsibility. So what happens when an incident blows up and a new, maybe more qualified commander actually arrives on the scene? You can't just toss them the keys and wish them luck. The handover is this highly methodical, rapid-fire checklist called the transfer of command. At a bare minimum, the outgoing commander has to brief the incoming one on the situation status, the core objectives and priorities, the current organization, and all the resource assignments. This system is brilliantly designed so leadership swaps out totally seamlessly without the rescue effort missing a single beat.
Which brings us to Section 3, Executing Operations. Let's step out of the command post for a second and look at the actual boots on the ground and the rotors in the sky.
Now, what's really interesting about this piece is how the operations section chief takes those big, broad objectives and turns them into tactical, actionable plans. They take this massive response and divide it up into manageable pieces. We're talking branches, divisions, and tactical groups, just so nobody gets overwhelmed and everyone has a direct, clear supervisor. When you drill down into those groups, you start hearing specific tactical jargon that actually tells you exactly what kind of muscle is being deployed. The big difference to know here is between a strike team and a task force. A strike team uses the exact same resources. Think of, say, 5 specialized search dogs working together. A task force, on the other hand, is a mix. It's a medical team, a ropes expert, and maybe a comms specialist all bundled up together to tackle a really complex, multifaceted problem. And as you can see, this brilliant structure cleanly splits that massive operations section into 2 heavily managed, totally distinct domains, the ground and the sky. Ground operations handles your trackers, your containment lines, your evacuations. Meanwhile, air operations manages the insanely complicated world of helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft. Keeping these completely separate ensures that your ground teams and your air support don't trip over or literally crash into each other while trying to hit the exact same objectives.
Let's move to Section 4 and see how this all builds scaling the rescue response. What actually happens when a localized emergency just explodes into a massive, chaotic, multi-agency disaster? Well, the system flexes. Say you've got multiple emergencies happening right next to each other, like a flash flood and then a massive mudslide right beside it. Those get grouped into what's called a complex. By assigning everything to a single incident commander, it completely prevents rescue teams from blindly competing against each other for the same helicopters or the same medical supplies. It ensures one unified strategy over the entire region. But what if a disaster crosses county, state, or even federal lines? That is when a single incident command just isn't going to cut it. You need a unified command. This is where multiple agencies with distinct legal jurisdictions come together, and without giving up their legal authority, they actually integrate their management. They act as one collective brain, basically ensuring they aren't working against each other's priorities. To actually pull this off, all these leaders have to hold an urgent, initial unified command meeting. They literally lay all their jurisdictional restrictions right out on the table, they hammer out collective objectives, they agree on a strategy, and they designate just one single operations section chief. They basically have to leave their egos at the door to create one cohesive, life-saving incident action plan. And then, when things get truly catastrophic, we're talking overlapping wildfires or massive statewide flooding, they spin up an area command. This is that top-down general's view. Sitting at the absolute highest level of coordination, they aren't micromanaging the ground rescues. No, they are managing critical resource conflicts, they're handling the politics, and they're directing macro-level logistics across a massive geographic footprint. To really give you a sense of this massive scale, just look at the Area Command Aviation Coordinator. This person's entire job is just to juggle local, federal, and military aircraft over a huge disaster zone. They establish flight restrictions, they deconflict incredibly complex airspace, and they make sure that rescue choppers and massive water bombers aren't literally colliding in the thick smoke. It is an absolute logistical marvel. So, bring all of this together, and you've got the ultimate blueprint for saving lives. It kicks off with rigid individual accountability. It builds up to a centralized strategy at the command post. It translates into highly delegated action on the ground, and it possesses this infinite scalability, handling everything from a single hiker lost in the woods all the way up to an area command managing a massive statewide disaster. I know these organizational charts might seem a little dry on the surface, but guys, these are the exact mechanisms that turn terrifying chaos into actual saved lives. So I'll leave you with this. If you were called out into the wild tomorrow, do you honestly have the discipline to surrender your ego, follow the checklist to the letter, and fit perfectly into a system designed entirely so others may live? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.